gotten stuck in a cycle of overthinking every little detail and you can't get yourself to move forward even when you know what to do? High achievers with perfectionistic programming cannot achieve everything that they're capable of unless they learn to let go. My name is Elyssa Smith. I'm a trauma informed life strategist. And in this episode of Unlock Your Blocks, I'm going to walk you through exactly where this pattern of overthinking and over negotiating in the mind starts and exactly how you can take steps to gently release and let go. So, why can't we let go? Why do we have to be so focused on every little detail and so looking at, well, is this perfect? Or if it's not perfect, I can't let it go. So, as a child, if you are an adult who is pretty perfectionistic, and especially as women, we have these pleasing tendencies. We need to please our way to safety as kids. And so we have to be the child that is, better seen and not heard. Or maybe girls didn't have as much privilege growing up as boys. So we have sort of a sexist idea of this as well. But basically, if you're an adult perfectionist, what that means is that as a kid, you were trying to control results and performance in order to stay safe. Now, if you learned that you needed to work harder, be better, or do more in order to get the right connection with your caregivers and affection, or in order to actually get your needs met in some way, big or small, or in order to stay safe from a threat, a big T trauma, a little T trauma, or even a tiny T trauma where you might have little or smaller emotional needs going unmet, if you didn't perform at this perfect level, then it's going to be really hard as an adult that programming is still going to be there and you're going to be stuck in these cycles of overthinking. So in childhood, we learn to do whatever it takes to balance the family. So if you picture a mobile and, over a baby's crib or something, and you have like, the little zebra, and then you have the elephant and the giraffe, and they're all going around to the music. And then you suddenly get rid of one of those. Everything else gets off balance, right? It's very similar in our family of origin when we're born into a dysfunctional family network, which every family is dysfunctional. I thought I had the perfect childhood. I had no trauma, like my parents didn't divorce or anything. And I just had this idea that I had the perfect upbringing. So the fact that I am having issues must be my fault. And if you're thinking that too, listen, it's not your fault. You came by your perfectionism or your people pleasing or your procrastination really as a result of whatever you went through, and there's no other way you could have responded to it. So when you learn that the way to get more affection or more of your needs met is to work harder, be better, do more, is to control your results and really focus in, I don't want to make mistakes, right? You also might have what I call the need to know trigger. So this shows up in a lot of my clients who are adult women who are really high achievers, but they have a hard time moving forward. So for example, I have one client who she and I have been working together over on and off over the past year. She has a business. And in her business, she wanted to create ads and be able to promote everything that she was doing, her classes, her supplements through ads. And I've seen this in other people in other situations too, but this is such a great example because I can so relate to the dilemma. So what her mind was doing is she was thinking, okay, so if I do ads, what if they don't work? So what if I lose money? Or what if it doesn't go as well as I wanted to? Or what if the ads aren't quite right? Or what if this, what if that? So if you go in a what if cycle, you might also have this need to know trigger. So the need to know trigger is something that we learn when we're little. If you have to have more information in order to try and control your results better. So if you are wondering, like, should I don't know what it would be. Let's think. So should I say that, yes, I do want this for supper, this one thing for supper? Well, maybe I don't have enough information because what if mom loses her temper because I said I wanted something specific for supper? Or maybe in your household, it was your job to make sure that everybody else was happy. And so what you might have learned is I need to know everything everyone else is thinking about me before I can make a decision to know how I'm going to make sure everyone else is happy with my decision. So we have that constant what if cycle Because it actually helped us, because it actually assisted us in surviving our childhood dysfunction. You might have also had, perhaps you grew up in a household. This happens oftentimes with kids of alcoholics or addicts. So maybe it was unpredictable at home. And so maybe you needed, before you can decide how you feel about anything, maybe you needed to know, to kind of take a litmus test of everybody else around you. That need to know trigger is super helpful in that situation. You're constantly wanting more information to try and guarantee the results that will keep you the safest. So now we know why this can start and where it gets originally programmed. What is the problem in adulthood? Well, it creates levels of self sabotage that keep you from moving forward because your system doesn't feel safe to move forward. You become the bottleneck of your own life, which means that you're the one that, things are happening, but because you get stuck in this overthinking, overanalyzing, analysis paralysis, if you want to call it, or the need to know trigger, I never know enough information, I never have enough guarantees to actually move forward. All the progress that you could be making, because down here is like your, below. Let's see, for those of you who are listening on audio only, I'm holding my hands kind of like a tent with my fingertips touching. And below that tent is all of the capacity that you have and all of the capabilities that you have and everything that's wonderful about how well you can perform and all of your creativity and all of those thoughts are there. But then when it gets up to this point, the need to know trigger or the perfectionism or the overthinking, all of those work together typically when you're coping to try and stay safe. It stops all that wonderful progress because we can't make a decision. No matter how much research we've done, no matter how much progress we've made, we can't actually get to that next point, that next level that we are trying to get to. So if you're the bottleneck, that means you probably, if you have a business, can't delegate well or can't seem to hire enough people or the right people to help you in your business. Or maybe you have people that you can delegate to, but you don't because you know that you can do it better, you can do it faster. And I have another episode of the podcast where I talk specifically about the zone of genius. And we need to be getting rid of the tasks in our personal and business lives that are not in our zone of genius so that we don't get burned out. But if you're having trouble doing that, it may be because you're stuck in this overthinking, trying to control results mode that you learned in childhood to keep yourself safe. So we also will end up, when we're perfectionistic, the thing that will stop our progress, that we get stuck in that overthinking, is our high standards. It is not a bad thing to have high standards. In fact, I had someone ask me about this. She said, is perfectionism actually self-sabotage? Because I feel like my perfectionism is what has caused me to do well in life. And we're not saying that high standards are bad, but if you are perfectionistic to your own detriment, where you sabotage yourself or where you abandon yourself, that's where this becomes a problem. Because if you do that for long enough, if you self-abandon for long enough, you're going to end up in relationships that don't serve you, in toxic situations. You're going to end up in a career or a job, if you're working, that doesn't end up aligning with you. You're going to end up in situations where you don't even know really what you want. You're going to end up later in life feeling super stuck, super unseen and unheard, and not feeling connected to what you're doing and how you operate. So your standards for yourself, though, if they are perfection and that's your standard, that is a problem, obviously, because you're going to burn out trying to get there and you'll never actually be happy enough with your results. You'll never be able to truly celebrate the little wins. And your nervous system thrives on progress over perfection. Because if we shoot for perfection and that's what we are focused on, and then we don't make it to that, we will constantly be feeling less than. So that feeds into imposter syndrome, negative self-talk. It also creates, if we have these impossible standards for ourselves, it can create impossible standards for other people because we're not being mindful of what is a reasonable way to proceed forward. And so we may be causing other people, including, like, as a mom, I can speak to this, including our children, to live up to certain standards that are unreasonable when we really need to be focusing on how we are interacting with them rather than what their results are. And not to say that we shouldn't have high standards, especially like in parenting, I have pretty high standards for my kiddo. Every morning he's got to check off his chart with me and we have to follow these, rules. But you know what? This morning he forgot one of them. And I found out after I dropped him off at my sister's house, and I'm not going to be hard on him about that later. He's allowed to forget things sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time. And it's the same with mistakes that we all make. And I'm going to talk in just a minute about how do you actually start to release a little bit more. So if we look at those impossible standards and we look at that, exactly how that affects us as adults, it fuels our negative self-talk to stay focused on the perfectionistic ways. You also, if you don't let go of the smaller things, you also are missing time that you could be pouring into something that really fills you up. So if you're so obsessed on this one project that has to be done just right, and you can't turn it in, or you can't present it, or you can't do anything, I mean, I give talks all the time in memberships and groups and at conferences, and I cannot afford to obsess over every little tiny detail, because if I get caught in the weeds, I miss the bigger picture, and I'm not going to bring the message and the impact and the compassion that I want to bring for my audiences. So we could be focusing on other more important things if we can let go of these littler things that probably don't actually impact the bottom line in the end. This also all leads to burnout. It also all leads to relationship burnout, where you're not able to connect because you're irritable. Whatever it is, your nervous system is not going to be a happy camper if you are constantly focused on the little tiny details and you can't see the forest for the trees. Another unfortunate side effect of having grown up as somebody who learned work harder, be better, do more, be more perfect, perform at this high level that doesn't allow for flaws or changing your mind or making mistakes, is that you lose track of yourself ultimately. This happened to me when I people pleased my way into a toxic marriage and abuse and things like this. And I didn't notice even what was happening because I was so used to abandoning myself that it didn't bother me when someone else did. It triggered me, but not to the point where I could see what was happening and actually remove myself from that situation until it was much too late. So if you are constantly trying for this perfection, if you are constantly overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to make sure you've got it just right before you even start the project, or before you turn it in, or before you start that renovation, or before you go and have a social outing with your friends or invite people over, if you're trying to make sure everything is just so, you are probably abandoning yourself, because you are going to get dysregulated by the idea of letting it be less than perfect. You're not going to like the idea of not being in control. Not that I love that, okay? But you can regulate yourself to the point that you can allow yourself to not feel like you're totally in control and to still know that you can keep yourself safe. If we know that that's what this causes in adulthood, it's not very pleasant, right? We want to get out of our own way. We want to release this stuff. We want to be able to let go of the things that are taking up our time when we could be focusing on things that build us up, things with our, spending time with loved ones, really looking at the overarching, what am I doing with my life question. So you have to be able to let go of the details. How do we do this? So number one, you have to be able to create a safe space for your system before you make the change. Your nervous system, if you are this type of person, this high achieving perfectionist overthinker, your system believes that that's the only way to stay safe. It doesn't have a track record that it has been paying attention to where you could be safe by relaxing. It's like, no, you're telling me to relax, you are telling me to die. So if you can make your system feel safe in the moment, and cause it to start noticing that every time you make a little change towards not overthinking, you make a little change towards starting before it's perfect and perfectly aligned, then you can actually get back in touch with your own needs, number one, because you have some gray area, some spaciousness to really pay attention to yourself. And you can also cause yourself to have a track record then of being safe when you do something different. In the short term, your own needs have to become such a high priority that you're willing to make the change of letting go of the results. In the moment, the way I love to coach my clients to do this is with my S method. So the first S is safety, and this refers to taking 3 deep breaths. It will calm your system, give you a couple of seconds of rational thinking. The second thing is self-nurturing. That's the second S. You nurture your 5 senses somehow. You can just make a cup of tea that hits 4 out of 5 senses. It can be quick and easy, something to tell your system we're not running from a wild animal. And then the third S is safe support. Connect with someone who loves you so that your brain knows we are not being kicked out of the herd, no matter how imperfect this effort is that we're going to do when we're letting go of the details. Long term, in order to avoid having to reset with the 3 S's, you have to actually uproot and rewire the programming from childhood that says the only way to safety is by working harder and doing more and being more perfect. And you can do this with a therapist. You can do this with someone like me who's trained in trauma informed coaching. Essentially, this rewiring has to start by uncovering, why did it start? What adult figure in your life did you get this feeling from? Was it family of origin? Was it a teacher? And then what were the beliefs that started in place at that time that we can begin to gently rewire and replace with positive beliefs? If you want some help with that and you are a female, you can book a free 15-minute Unlock Your Blocks focus call with me. I would love to see you on my calendar. I hope you found this really helpful today, and I hope that in the meantime, until I see you next time, you'll take such good care of yourself.